Hello everyone! Interesting lighting we have in this video. All of my videos are gonna seem so dark lately because it gets dark so early here. So even when I do things earlier in the day, I have no real natural light. So forgive the weirdness of the lighting, but hey everyone, my name's Cara. I am your Tuesday host here on the Pagan Perspective, and this week we're talking about art. This week is a regular full-time hosts week. Next week will be our subs week this month because after that, the collab is taking end of the year holiday break, the rest of the weeks in December off, and then we will return after the new calendar year. So this is my first and last Pagan Perspective collab video for December of 2019. I can't even believe it's December already. Happy December. So this week we're talking about art, and the prompt was to talk about if there's any art that we do related to our path that we'd like to share, or if there are any other people's art that is important to us. So this greatly depends on the breadth and depth of what we each consider art, right? So there are some types of art that I can show you in this video, and there are some types of art that I really can't, or I could, but no, I'm not prepared to do so. So some of you know that I do have a background in education in theater arts. So theater is definitely an area of art that is really important to me, and has been something that I have been able to incorporate both into my magic, but also something that I've been able to create to incorporate my magic into. So ritual theater is a thing, finding space within ritual for theater moments of acting out stories, acting things out that have to do with whatever you're celebrating, or theatrics that help you manifest your intentions, right? But there have also been times where I'm doing theater out in the world, in the mundane world, as we might call it, where I have been able to infuse my own magic into those performances, into those productions. So, for example, I stage managed and sort of assistant directed a kids production of The Secret Garden some years ago. And that's a very, very magical story in many ways. The Secret Garden, of course, being a sort of magical place. And so I was able to incorporate some magical type intentions with that in the discussions and in the theming of how we did our production, things like that. So I have both used theater directly in my magical practice and incorporated my magical practice into the theater that I do elsewhere in life. Something else that I consider art that I didn't prepare to share with you today is poetry. I do write poetry from time to time. I have since I was young. It's not something that I do every day or every week by any means, but there are certain times when the inspiration strikes and I'll write 5 poems in a row on the same day, and then I might not write any again for a year, whatever. So poetry is something that I have used also to create my own sort of blessings, my own invocations, certainly, things like that for my rituals, but also just devotional pieces, sort of devotional poetry, things like that. I write songs and chants as well. So those are forms of art that I absolutely recognize and that are important to me in my path, but that I did not prepare to share with you in this video today. Some of the things I do have to share with you are more tangible, like visual examples of art. So one of the first things that a lot of people think of when we think of art is the type that is visual, like drawn or painted or sketched or otherwise put on paper or canvas traditionally. So what I typically do, I grew up with my mom being a very artsy person as well, very arts and craftsy, and I definitely have continued that tradition, as you'll see with some of the things I'm going to show you. But one of the only things that I do in sort of that traditional like drawing area that some people think of immediately when we say art is I like to draw with Sharpie pretty much exclusively on reused cardboard. So this is not a thing that I share with a lot of people. My Patreon sponsors get to see some of my art here and there, but even they haven't been seeing that much of it because I'm just falling behind with sharing things with them. But this is a very exclusive look at something that I do. Not that it's like that spectacular and you're going to be like, oh my god, Cara's so talented or whatever. But no, it's just something that I don't typically share. It's something that I do for myself, and yeah. And then like, you know, it doesn't even get hung up in my house because I don't have frames that will fit things. But anyway, this is an example of something that I've been doing also since my school days, because this is one of the ways that I would doodle in my notebooks. I have lots of different types of doodles, and I still have lots of them from school, but this is one of the types of things that I started doing and that I now continue to do as an adult with Sharpie on reused cardboard from, you know, wherever I might get it. And I typically have either a theme or an intention in mind when I am doing this. So that's the only background I really have to tell you. And here is one of the pieces. So yeah, I sort of start with a theme or intention in mind, and I pick the colors that go with that. And then what it actually turns into is pretty much just intuitive. So I would consider this intuitive art, and I've done some custom pieces for people in this style as well. And of course you could, you know, put it any direction you choose. It's rather abstract in that way. But there are some recurring sort of maybe shapes and patterns and symbols that are important to me that I utilize within this type of stuff. But otherwise it's really just intuitive, and I kind of I'm just kind of letting it flow as it will. You know, I start with what other color appeals to me. I start drawing whatever shapes tell me they want to be there, and then I get a sense of like, okay, I'm done with that color, and I set it aside, and then I pick up the other color and I do as much as I feel is appropriate with that one, and until it's time to set that color aside. And then if I'm using a third color, I pick up the third color, or I'll go back to that first color, whatever the case may be. So yeah, that's an example of some of the like ink on paper, it's cardboard in this case, type of art that I do. Similar art of that type that is important to me includes, I love Laura Tempest Zakroff's art. This is a bookmark that I obtained with some of Laura's art, but I love Laura Tempest Zakroff's art. This is a portrait of me that was done by a personal friend of mine. So I have a lot of friends who are artists, and their art, of course, is important to me, but this is actually a portrait that they did of me. So this was by my friend Claire. And they also did this adorable piece for me as well. I actually did a video on my personal channel unboxing a care package that Claire sent me that contained these two pieces of art. So, you know, and this is an original, so it's special to me because it's something that, you know, came from a friend of mine and was specifically for me at a certain time of life. And so, yeah, they're framed and everything. Laura, one artist whose work has always been very important to me is Victoria Francis, and I don't have any of her art handy, which is strange because I had printed out versions of it all over my college dorm room and things like that, and I tried to find those before doing this video, but I couldn't find them. They're somewhere in this house, but Victoria Frances, Frances, does a lot of witchy themed art and other such things. And so I discovered Victoria's art probably back in my late teens, sometime in the 2000s. And I've just been a huge fan ever since. And now I follow her on Instagram and I get to see some of the new stuff she's working on. So that's just like really cool to me, of course. Another Instagram artist I really love is Dawn of Mercurial Mind Art. And I love Dawn's art personally, like their personal art, as well as, though, having participated in some of the art practices that Dawn makes possible. So what I mean by that is Dawn occasionally does these things where she'll get a puzzle, one of those craft puzzles where you can make a painting, create your own puzzle, and instead will mail the pieces to artists all over the world, and we have a theme to follow, and then we mail them back to her and she puts them together. So last year, 2018, I participated in one of these communal puzzle art projects, and the theme was Yule or Winter Solstice. And this is my printout of the final product. So all of these puzzle pieces were done by different people about the same theme. And so I really loved it. My piece is the phoenix up in the corner there. And you can see the color is not very saturated, especially compared to all these other pieces of art. And that's because I used all, instead of actual paint, I used all plant-based materials. So that red ink is actually pomegranate juice. I used black tea. I used actual ivy and ash leaves from my backyard for the green. I used turmeric for the orange and yellow, turmeric diluted to different strengths, and also a bit of ash from herbs that I had burned. I used ash to fill in some of the darker lines, which they don't even look that dark on the, this is a printed out copy of it, but yeah, so that's what I did. And I think that things like that as well are really important to me. Opportunities to make magic together, making art together, strengthening community through doing magical projects like that together. So yeah, I'm a big arts and craftsy person, and I really appreciate Dawn's art and also the projects that she comes up with for other people to do. So again, Dawn is Mercurial Mind Art on Instagram. I'll put it in the video description as well. So some other things that I've done in the past that aren't on cardboard, or like I mentioned that my mom was very artsy and I was always doing arts and craftsy things with her. We used to paint on things like stones and pieces of slate that we would find in the woods. We would paint on wood, anything but a canvas, basically. So yeah, the fact that I now use mainly cardboard is kind of like the closest I've ever been to an actual canvas. But another form of art that I have done in the past, and I don't do as much today, but still do from time to time, is jewelry making, actually. So I have here, this is one of my least favorite ones, which is why it didn't get sold. This was kind of a tester, but it sits over here on my shelves, so it's very easy to pick it up and show it to you in a video. But I've made these Tree of Life pendants for quite some years now with real stone chips, crystal chips, and wire, and I make it from scratch. So I make the frame and all, which is why it's a little bit wonky. Yeah, this one didn't come out exactly how I usually like them to look, so this one did not get posted online and sold. So it's still sits over here on my shelf. And another example, I mean, if you've seen when I used to use my Etsy shop, and I'm not going to continue using Etsy, but I will be posting more of the things that I have and that I still make, but I'll just be using like my blog or putting things on Instagram and, you know, letting people get them directly rather than going through the Etsy marketplace. But so you may have seen, if you've seen any of that, that I do things with pentacles and crystals and stuff like that, right? But something else that I've done that I don't think anyone has really seen unless you've seen me wear it, because I have worn this a few times now. Last year, I believe it was, I made myself this piece that just has some sort of iridescent rainbow moonstone-like opalescent round beads, as well as some shiny black beads. They're black, but with little flashes of sort of metallic rainbow, like an oil slick, sort of on one side of them, so that you get little bits of flash depending on which way it's going. But I made myself this piece as a moon magic piece. So it has 13 opalescent beads to represent the 13 full moons in a lunar year. And it has 14 then dark moon beads, only to make it sit evenly, because I wanted one of the full moon beads to be in the center when wearing it. Otherwise, I was just going to go with 13 and 13 for the 13 moons, but I wanted this one to sit in the center. So I do have 14 dark beads on there, but yeah, so I've made another one of these and didn't end up posting it because I stopped using my Etsy and I haven't posted anything else yet since then. But this is something that I did last year and that I wear occasionally that to me is representative of the moon cycles. So there's that. More hands-on type of art that I do. I learned crocheting from my grandmother. This is just one of the recent things that I made, which is a water bottle holder, or sometimes I've used them just like as a purse when I go places. But I love things like this because I love things that are also practical. So I like crafty things that are for practical use. I love things that are just art as well, but especially like if I'm making things, I love to think of ways that I can solve problems with crafts. So it's like I carry this water bottle around with me all the time, and I don't want to put it into my tote bag because if it falls down, it might leak. And you know, even if you get water bottles that don't really leak, sometimes I still have issues with that, or it gets lost at the bottom of your bag, whatever. So I end up holding it, but then it's in my hand, or I have to tuck it under my arm, and it's just difficult. So if I can solve a problem with crafts, then I do. And to me, you know, it's part of my worldview of recycling and reusing things as well, rather than going out and buying a commercially made, mass-produced water bottle sling. You know, I make something like this, which I get a lot of my yarn secondhand, either from the thrift store, or I can't even tell you how many times people have been like, oh, I found this in my great aunt's house. We were cleaning it out. Here, do you want a bunch of yarn? You know, so I enjoy using things like that and making them into something new and useful. And to me, it's also part of my ancestor practice because I learned the skill originally from my grandmother. So I have many happy memories of sitting, and even as an adult, when I sort of took up crocheting again several years ago now, I have many happy memories of visiting her and bringing whatever crochet project I was working on and encouraging her to work on hers and just sitting and doing crochet work together. So this is by no means representative of all the crocheting that I do. I do a whole lot of different things, but this is a recent one and it's in Halloween-y colors, so I just grabbed that one to show you. Another thing that I do is I sew by hand everything that I sew. I don't have a working sewing machine, and I just enjoy hand sewing because to me it's also a form of knot magic. So it's still knot magic if you're using a machine, don't get me wrong. But for me, I enjoy the tactile nature of it and being able to put the intentions into that. And, you know, I always tie off my knots 3 times because the number 3 is significant to me, all kinds of things like that. So one of the things that I sew is I hand sew my own pouches for my tarot decks. So this is the one I made for my Halloween tarot. This is just a single, a Halloween patchwork fabric that my partner bought for me, but then I separately added this spiderweb fabric as the drawstring. So all of this part, that's just the fabric print on its own, but then I added the spiderweb and I braided 3 different colors of yarn for the drawstring, added a wooden bead. There we go. So I always hand sew my own pouch for my tarot decks or oracle decks if they don't have a box that I like to keep them in. So yeah. And these are things that I've done for other people before as well, but this is probably the most recent one that I did. And then speaking of tarot, another form of art, other people's art that I really enjoy is, the art in tarot and oracle decks. I'm always telling people who ask me, like, there's so many different tarot and oracle decks out there. Even if I wanted to get started using one, how would I choose? I'm always telling people that the likely situation is that you're going to be looking at the art to give you whatever message you are going to get from it. Some people, it doesn't even matter what's on the cards. Some people use the cards merely as tools and the message is coming from somewhere else entirely. But what is most likely for many people is that you're going to be looking at the card art to give you impressions, and that's how you will get your messages. So I always tell people, find an art style that appeals to you, or find a deck that the art, you just really enjoy it, or it seems to speak to you, or whatever the case may be. So I really love, this is the Halloween tarot. This is the pouch that I made for mine. It's by Kipling West, and I really love Kipling West's art, so that's a person whose art style I really enjoy. I have multiple decks that were illustrated by Kipling West, so I love that. Also, recently on my personal channel, I did a deck flip through video of this, the Oddments Tarot by Motion Sickness of Time Travel. It was a limited edition deck that I got through the Buckland Museum. And so you'll see on my personal channel, I did an Oddments Tarot flip through and unboxing video. And it's all collage type art. So this is a new art style, a new artist that I've been recently introduced to. And if you want to see more of that, the video is on my personal channel. But I haven't done a lot of in-depth working with that deck yet. It's my newest deck at this point in time. But yeah, it's by a musician from Georgia in the United States known as Motion Sickness of Time Travel, and the deck is called the Oddments Tarot. Yeah, so different people's art that really speaks to me, and also just when I know the person, I tend to appreciate their art even a little bit more. Although I can definitely appreciate art without knowing the person, when I do know the person, there just tends to be another level of appreciation for what they're doing. Or if it's someone that I've gotten to create art with, then that adds another layer to it as well for me. The people that I've created it with, the people who taught me how to make it. So yeah, art in all of its forms, from theater to crocheting to the art that hangs all over my walls or sits in folders because I don't put it up. I don't have frames for it yet. Art in general is important to me. And I think that's something that we talked about on the collab earlier this year, or maybe last year. I don't remember, like the importance of art in my path and in my practice. So I might have repeated some of those things, or I might have touched on things that I didn't in that video by showing you some tangible examples. But yeah, I love art. And I'm sure that there are many artists and types of art that are important to me, that if I sat down and thought about it even longer and tried to make a list, I will have forgotten to mention many names. But definitely Victoria Frances springs to mind very early because one of my favorite artists who does a lot of specifically witchy type art. And then, yeah, I'm always learning about new tarot deck illustrators, artists of that nature as well. So, and, you know, my partner also really loves art, so we're constantly going to, you know, and the Museum of Art, the Cleveland Museum of Art, I like to go there every few years, if not every other year. Typically for my birthday, I like to switch off between going to the CMA and the Cleveland Botanical Gardens. So there are certain pieces at the Cleveland Museum of Art that are very special to me as well. Yeah, I obviously don't have specific examples of those right now, but yeah, the art that has been important to human history in general is really interesting to me. Of course, I love going and seeing all of the religious art, the way that different people of different traditions and cultures all around the world throughout history have depicted their deities, their spirits, their practitioners. You know, there are some paintings that depict priests or priestesses or, you know, whatever. So things like that are always very cool to me and very interesting to me. And sometimes I find a piece at the museum, maybe there's an exhibit that's only there for a certain amount of time or whatever. Sometimes I find a piece that really speaks to me and ends up being really important to me in some way or another. Maybe it answers a question that I've been thinking about, or maybe it gets me to start thinking about something that I never have before. So yeah, that's what I have to say about art. And that is almost a half-hour video, but you know what? It's the only one I'm going to do for this collab channel in December of 2019. So I think we're all set. I'll see you over on my personal channel in the meantime. I will still be doing videos there throughout the collab break, but enjoy the time off from the collab. Enjoy the rest of this week's videos. Enjoy the subs hosts videos next week. And enjoy your end of calendar year celebrations, whatever they may be. And we'll see you after the new year. Or I will see you again here on this channel next after the new calendar year. Thanks so much for watching. Until I see you next time, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye.